How dare they try to deny women their rights and their freedoms?
Overnight, hundreds gathering at the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. Protesters erupting there after the dramatic report. In a joint statement, Democrats, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi accusing some of the conservative justices on the bench of lying during their confirmation hearings about their willingness to overturn Roe.
The United States Supreme Court is ready to overturn Roe v. Wade and uproot decades of precedent affirming a woman's right to an abortion. It is hard not to feel angry, troubled, and deeply disturbed about what overturning Roe would do to women across America.
President, can it do away with the filibuster to codify Roe?
I'm not prepared to make those judgments now.
But the reason it was leaked is some left-wing, presumably law clerk, wanted to put political pressure on the 5 justices that presumably are in the majority right now. They wanted to put heat, and they wanted to invoke politics to try to get them to change their vote.
With Democrats bracing for the possibility of big losses, the question is, will they find a way to re-energize key voters with this issue?
Greetings, my friends. After the unexpected release of the initial draft of the majority opinion of the Supreme Court about banning women's rights to abortion, the Democrats are now utilizing this as an opportunity to distract their voter base from paying attention to the terrible policy decisions they have made. It will be used as a focal point leading up to the midterm elections. Some Democrats are calling the right to have an abortion as a sacred law, while others are planning to halt the entire legislation mechanism to codify the Roe Vs Wade case. However, what people are failing to notice, number one, is that a leak of an initial draft of a landmark decision by the Supreme Court has never happened in the last 2 centuries, which infiltrates the very integrity of the Supreme Court. And number two, the enormous amount of abortions that have occurred since the passing of Roe vs. Wade in 1973. Okay, my friends, let's take a closer look together. If we go back a few weeks, the general public and the media were aware that the Supreme Court was considering overruling Roe vs. Wade. Let me give you an example. I want you to take a look at this article that was written on April 7th, 2022. The very first line clearly says, lawmakers and advocates are preparing for a Supreme Court ruling this summer that could weaken Roe vs. Wade, the 1973 decision that enshrined federal abortion protections. Now, the Republicans did not need to commit a criminal act, such as leaking the document, because obtaining this document before the actual decision by the Supreme Court would not have done any good for them, as it was already in their favor. Which leaves us with only one party with strong connections, financial power, as well as sufficient tools to infiltrate the sacred infrastructure of the Supreme Court to fulfill their objectives: the Democrats. You see, the Democrats were already facing pressure from every angle. There's the supply chain crisis, record high inflation, skyrocketing prices of oil and gas, the loss of trust from the majority of Americans, and last but certainly not least is the exposure of Biden and his son's illegal connections with the CCP. So, if the Roe vs. Wade case would have come into picture after the signing of the majority judges during the summer, then Democrats would have lost every opportunity to regain the trust of the people. And as the draft is leaked into the hands of the public before obtaining the signature of all 5 judges, it has now given the Democrats a new talking point to rally their voter base around. They will use this as a distraction to keep the attention off all of their terrible policies. Here is the reaction of Senator Ted Cruz that adds further credibility to this analysis.
It is truly stunning. In over 2 centuries of our nation's history, this has never happened. And this is as corrosive, as destructive to the Supreme Court as we've ever seen. What it means is that there was some angry left-wing law clerk who breached the trust to his or her justice, who breached the trust to the Supreme Court, who breached the trust to the American people, and took a first draft of an opinion and decided to leak it to everyone. This is the consequence of the Democrats rabidly partisan effort to undermine the court, to attack the court. This is part and parcel of Chuck Schumer standing on the steps of the court and threatening the justices, saying you will reap the whirlwind. This is part and parcel of the effort by Democrats to pack the Supreme Court. But the reason it was leaked is some left-wing, presumably law clerk, wanted to put political pressure on the 5 justices that presumably are in the majority right now. They wanted to put heat, and they wanted to invoke politics to try to get them to change their vote. And by the way, if that left-wing law clerk succeeds, it will be the most grotesque politicization of the Supreme Court in the history of our nation.
So it appears that this document has been leaked to distract the voters from the real urgent issues during midterm elections. Well, here are some comments from credible sources that openly express how Democrats are going to take advantage of this leak. Kelly Dietrich, who leads the National Democratic Training Committee that is responsible for preparing candidates for successful campaigns, said, "It has the potential to be a game changer, but it is not going to be a panacea for the Democratic challenges coming this fall. We need to use this as another opportunity to remind voters how out of step Republicans are." Ohio's Representative Tim Ryan said, "We cannot sit back and allow the Supreme Court to gut Ohioans' most fundamental rights. Control of the Senate has never been more important. It's time to end the filibuster, pass the Women's Health Protection Act, and fight like hell to make sure all Ohio families are free to make these critical decisions without interference from politicians in Columbus or Washington." Using violent words like fighting like hell and we cannot sit back and allow the Supreme Court clearly shows how desperate Democrats have become leading up to the midterm elections. Now, the filibuster, which Tim Ryan talked about ending, was established in 1887 and has acted as a protector of democracy by stopping both the parties from passing radical legislation forcefully. Furthermore, it is the filibuster that has helped in delaying the massive $1.9 trillion Build Back Better bill. The good news is Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema hold the power of maintaining the filibuster on the floor, and they have now expressed they are not in favor of removing it. Now, moving on to the second main issue that no one is talking about is the enormous number of abortion cases that have occurred since the passing of Roe Vs. Wade. Since its passing, there has been 63 million babies killed. As we discussed on yesterday's episode, around 20 million of those were black babies. I also want to remind you of the disturbing case in which an activist discovered 115 aborted fetuses in a box at a clinic. Here, take a look.
Lauren Handy and I went to Washington Surgery Center to engage in anti-abortion advocacy. Upon arrival, we saw a truck labeled Curtis Bay Medical Waste Services parked outside. We approached the driver, who was about to load 2 large boxes with biohazard symbols onto his truck. We asked him if he knew what was in the boxes, and after he said no, we told him, dead babies.
However, despite Democrats being aware of the enormous number of innocent babies being killed, the Democratic Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, said in his latest tweet, "Let's be clear, the right to an abortion is sacred. Democrats have to act quickly, get rid of the filibuster to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, and finally codify Roe into law. We cannot afford to wait." Now, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "People elected Democrats precisely so we could lead in perilous moments like these to codify Roe, hold corruption accountable, and have a president who uses his legal authority to develop through congressional gridlock on items from student debt to climate. It's high time we do it." Furthermore, Ed Whelan, who is the Deputy Assistant Attorney General for former President George W. Bush, commented about abortions being sacred. He said, "Sacred if Moloch is your god." And for those of you who don't know who Moloch is, he is a pagan god whose followers would practice child sacrifice. But if there's one thing that the left is perfectly willing to lose, it is the sense of reason and decorum over its abortion. Entire marches can be crafted out of it. It's a ready-made rally point that has arrived just in time to unite voters. The timing is so perfect that it doesn't feel like an accident. The left needed something to get their base energized, and here it is, delivered almost magically. We must find out who leaked the draft decision, and I guarantee you it went to more places than just Politico.
我有一个幸福的家庭，这是我的小儿子库杜斯，我的大儿子在内地上大学，他是我老公库尔班。
哎，帅哥，你这个坏怂，不要胡说八道。
妈妈，什么是爱什么？
我们现在的生活非常幸福和很自由。
中央说新疆人没有自由，这样子坏话你说的嘛都不对。我们新疆这个地方少数民族很自由。
They want to flood out any other competing information that might show a more realistic, a fuller picture of what's happening in China, and just flood the zone with this positive content.
With the constant effort to secretly commit genocide against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang, the Chinese Communist Party is now targeting social media influencers as a cover-up to their actions in front of the world. The videos you just saw of the families belong to one of the Uyghur families in the same Xinjiang region. However, when the ProPublica and the New York Times studied around 3,000 videos, they found a pattern of repeated words like "we are happy," "genocide news are fake," which showed these Uyghur people were forced by the Chinese Communist Party agents to recite scripted words in front of a camera to propagate a false narrative to convince the world that there is no genocide or human rights violations being committed in the Xinjiang region of China. And when the activists tried to contact the people who mentioned their phone numbers in the videos, there was no one available on the other side. Now, another disturbing revelation was made by the nonprofit Radio Free Asia news service, in which the Chinese Communist Party invited foreign vloggers or influencers to the Xinjiang region to vlog and document how happy Uyghur people are. In return, they paid millions of dollars to the influencers, including food and travel charges, to shoot these videos. Surprisingly, translators were also provided by the Chinese Communist Party to ensure the mission was conducted smoothly. And if the vloggers tried to cover other areas or refused to cooperate with the CCP agents, they would be deported immediately back to their country. Now, Winston Stursel, a South African vlogger, said he was deported from China for refusing to shoot a video for $2,000 confessing that Wuhan coronavirus originated in the United States.
Look out! To become a hero, I do it, I become the enemy. It doesn't seem fair.
The most awaited Marvel movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, is now banned from playing in China after the China Film Administration noticed a newspaper box of the Epoch Times in a particular scene. The box turns up in a scene when Doctor Strange was fighting a monster. However, the experts are claiming that they are not surprised with the China Film Administration's bizarre way of censoring movies, as they never tell you why they are doing it. But this time, we can be sure. It's because the Epoch Times is known for its uncensored coverage of current affairs in China, including human rights violations, genocide of Uyghur Muslims and house Christians, and the atrocity of harvesting organs from practitioners of Falun Gong. Now, famous author Chris Fenton said, "We should be making movies that cater to audiences around the world, but we should be doing it protecting the rights of the filmmakers themselves to be able to tell stories completely unfettered by any sort of censorship, by any sort of influence of propaganda objectives by China." That's it for today, my friends. Don't forget to please like and share, and most importantly, join our member site and support the mission to deliver truthful information. I'd rather depend on the generosity of you, people I can trust, than ever be dependent on YouTube again. I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me, and I'll see you next time.